Well, good morning. Welcome to Threes In. Um, for those of you I haven't met and don't know me, I loved being a 38 IP. Just absolutely loved it. I can remember driving to work and just getting excited at the thought of flying a couple, three times that day with students. I loved working with young people. Overall, just had a ball with it. I had volunteered to be a 38 instructor pilot and was so fortunate to receive that assignment, and I knew it. I was well aware of it every time that I strapped on the jet, just how fortunate I was to be where I was. For the most part, the guys I flew with were highly motivated, self motivated for the most part, polite, just fun to work with. And like I said, I enjoyed every bit of it, except on maybe one or two occasions, and this is one of them. This one afternoon, I was given a flight with this kid for a day night out and back. Now, that's where we take a student, we fly to an outbase just about sunset, maybe not quite, maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock. We take off and we head to an outbase. In this case, it was to Fort Worth from Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma. And we go in and do our thing during a cross-country turn. And then we fly back in time to get back to Vance just after sunset. And the object of the mission is to acquaint them with night flying, night landings, and so forth. So that's what the mission was. And I got this kid. I think I had seen him around the squadron. I don't think I had a view of him one way or the other, but that changed significantly once we got in the cockpit and started down toward Fort Worth. We leveled off at, we were assigned like 35,000 feet. We leveled off, and I noticed he would be flying at 35,200 feet. So I'd say to him, hey, Chip, the altitude assigned is 35,000. Well, we were given a range of plus or minus 300 feet, and that's considered on altitude. He said, well, sir, 200 feet's good. He says, that's within our window of tolerance. No, it's not good. It's not quite good enough. If you could hold 35,200 feet, you could hold 35,000. And I always looked at that as something that held us apart from other folks. If they told us 35,000 feet, that's where they expected us to be, and we should do everything we can to make sure we're at 35,000 feet. So I kind of explained the philosophy of that to him a little bit more in depth, and he grudgingly coasted down to 35,000, and there were just some things like that. I ran into the same issues with airspeed control. 300 knots, 290 knots is good enough, that's close enough, and so forth like that. No, it's not close enough. You're supposed to be at 300 knots, that's what you're supposed to be at. So we get down to Fort Worth and Carswell. Went in, I debriefed them, and spent a little bit more time explaining to them why this is important. If you get lackadaisical toward those kind of things, it's going to follow over to where you're lackadaisical downstream with other issues. Okay, fine. I thought I'd made my point. So then we take off. We're heading back to Vance. And again, I encountered a little bit of that, but the resistance wasn't quite as much. If I said, hey, Chip, you're at 33,100 feet, he'd go ahead and correct it without much more conversation and so forth. But anyway, that attitude was just there. I could just sense it. So then we came into the traffic pattern there at Vance, and he pitched out for the first landing, came around, couldn't find the runway. Well, he could find it, but he couldn't land on it. Anyway, got sent around, or we went around, and we had enough gas for 5 landings, I think, 5 or 6. And 4 out of the 5 he flew, didn't hit the runway once, and then I took it for the full stop, and we landed. And he became awful quiet on the way in for a change. So we get into the flight room, and sit down to debrief. Now it's getting to be around 9:30, 9 o'clock, somewhere like that. So I'm sitting there, start through the grade sheet to debrief them, and I talk to them more about professionalism and, again, what sets us apart for being exact and so forth, taking pride in that, taking pride in our flying and so forth. And he kind of offered me a little bit of unsolicited verbal feedback, but not a lot. I think he sensed I wasn't in the mood for it. So anyway, as I'm working down the grade sheet and starting to see the things that he carried this attitude through, I'm getting more and more pissed off. I just think, why is this knothead even here? Jesus, we need guys like this. I don't know. So finally, I got down to a point about 2/3 of the way down. I thought, okay, Holliker, you need to take a time out. So I excused myself, got up from the desk. I said, you just stay here. I said, I'll be back in a minute. So I walked into check section. A friend of mine was sitting in check section, Brooke Wolf. And Brooker says, hey, what's up? And I sat down. I said, I need to sit down here, have a beer, and cool off. I said, I got this, kid. And Brooke says, oh, man, boss. He says, I don't know how you're handling it. Anyway, we sat there, and I finished my beer and got up, walked back into the room, picked up the grade sheet where I left off, started down about 2 or 3 items, and I was furious. I just picked up where I left off. This kid, who the hell's he think he is with this kind of an attitude? So I race-sued, got to the bottom. I said, of course you know you pinked this ride. A pink is a fail. I said, you know you pinked this ride, don't you? He said, yes, sir. I said, all right. He said, now, grade sheet aside. I said, you probably think I'm a big meanie, I suppose. And he opened his mouth. He said, no, hold it a second. You don't have a speaking part here. I said, I'm attached to the safety office. And I said, I fly with your flight as guest help. I said, I was looking forward to coming over here and having just a nice, relaxing out and back this evening to top the day off. But instead, I end up having to fly with you. And I said, do you know why I got stuck with you? And he said, he looked at me and said, no, sir. I said, because none of your IPs want to fly with you. I said, you're such a smartass. And I said, none of them really want to be around with you, so I get stuck with the crap. And I said, I don't really appreciate it. I said, I'm going to have a little come to Jesus meeting with your flight commander when I'm done here. But I said, there are too many people that would love to be in your position here, and you're just taking it for granted, and that's not acceptable. So I said, I suggest you head back to your queue room or wherever you go at night and have a quiet little come to Jesus with yourself about your attitude. I said, this has just been a miserable experience for me. And I said, I suppose it has been for you too. But I said, in my eyes, that doesn't matter that much. So I said, see ya. And I got up and walked out. Well, a couple days later, I was walking through the squadron, and Teddy Parker walked up to me, Lieutenant Parker. Nice kid. New IP, came up and he says, sir, you have a minute? I said, you bet, Ted, what's up? And he says, I don't know what you said to Chip, but he said his attitude has changed dramatically since you flew with him the other night. And I said, how's that? And he said, well, for the first time in the program, he's called me sir. Now, day-night out and backs probably came during the 5th month of 6-month T-38 program. So I can't imagine what Ted endured with that kid. But Ted says, for the first time, he's called me sir, and I really appreciate it. I said, not a problem. Not a problem, Ted. I said, thanks for sharing that with me. Anyway, of the hundreds of students that I've flown with, that was probably one of my most miserable experiences. And hopefully, if I was able to sort him out to where he would have gone on to have a good Air Force career, then it was worth it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again on another story. Take care.